Thanks for joining us for this Black History Month special. I'm Melissa Jackson. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to introduce you to some people who are making history right now in our community. We'll start with three names you probably know. Bob Kendrick, president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, Tasha Hammett, granddaughter of barbecue legend L.C. Richardson, and Alvin Brooks, civil rights activist and community leader. First up, Charlie Keegan shows us the legacy that Brooks is leaving for future generations.
For our kids to look back.
Books about Black history fill the library at South Hickman Mills Middle School.
That's why you're here today.
Now the school will be named after a man making history in Kansas City, Alvin Brooks.
You don't do what you do for the reason to get your name on a building or anything like that. You do it because you feel it's the right thing to do.
As a Hickman Mills School Board member, Brooks has seen education change the lives of Black children. About 60% of Hickman Mills students are Black.
I've spoken at too many funerals of young African-American males, and most of them never finished high school. Most of them were dropouts or cast outs or put outs, and it's society's problem. And this is the institution that makes the difference.
Superintendent Yao Bang said Brooks sets a great example for the students in these classes.
We want to give the school a new identity, and what better to have them connected to a living legend.
There is a book about Brooks with chapters on founding the ad hoc group against crime, serving on the city council, and fighting for civil rights.
You can laugh through life, be successful, and take on the challenges that you have with class and dignity and style, and I think he represents that.
Obeng said it's important to install new signs at the school this spring so the 92-year-old Brooks can see his name on the building.
What I don't want to happen is someone saying, well, Alvin Brooks is looking down on us. No, I want to be right there looking. Don't wait too long.
Brooks wants to bring the lessons of his book to life face-to-face with the students here. Charlie Keegan, KSHB 41 News.
It says it right here on the packaging. LC's is famous. I'm Caroline Hogan, and this Black History Month, we're talking to the woman behind the business and how she makes sure her grandfather's legacy continues.
Love the sauce, right?
Yes.
At LC's Barbecue, Tasha Hammett does a little bit of everything, from taking calls
All right, thank you, bye-bye.
to taking orders. But she's happy to. After all, it's a family business, started by her grandfather, L.C. Richardson. When he passed away 4 years ago, she filled his seat.
So I think I was 12 when I started coming here, and he showed me the ropes of customer service, and he taught me the cash register. And
It's a big role, but she learned from the best, and it shows even more during Black History Month.
Kansas City is known for barbecue, but if you look up Black-owned businesses that are barbecues, it's very, very, very limited.
Now, as a Black female business owner, Tasha's willing to work twice as hard to keep LC's a KC staple.
If I have to come in here after working a full day, I come in here. If I got to open, I open. If I have to close, I close.
With the help of her employees and the customers, who she calls family, they're keeping that flame burning.
When I make decisions that affect his legacy, I always have him in the back of my mind, and I feel like he's always looking down on me. All of our stuff comes with the goodies.
Tasha thinks he'd be proud of her, and she's proud of herself.
I celebrate every day that I'm successful, every day that I do something, every day that I'm impactful.
She only hopes she can make a difference in someone's life like her grandfather did in hers. Caroline Hogan, KSHB 41 News.
I'm KSHB reporter Fernando Silva, and I am inside the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City. Bob Kendrick has been the president here since 2011. He says it is too early to talk about legacy, as there's more to come in the future. According to him, his biggest inspirations are in generations from the present and the future, like his granddaughter, but also from the past, like one of his best friends, Buck O'Neil.
I sometimes reflect they paid me to work with Buck O'Neil, something that I absolutely would have done for nothing.
The facility was much smaller.
It was just one room at that time, had some photographs on the wall, some boxes of memorabilia.
Bob immediately felt like he had hit a grand slam.
I literally walked into what would become my passion.
3 decades later, it hasn't changed.
I've always felt like he's been guiding my footsteps.
He is Kansas City Monarchs legendary Buck O'Neil.
For me to essentially have been passed the baton and now carrying on in his memory and doing everything that not only myself but our entire team can collectively do to make sure that his spirit is very much alive when you walk into this museum.
Betty Brown has seen their friendship over the years.
Bob is the kind of person that People just love him.
She says he wears many hats.
Bob is a celebrity.
He's also an encyclopedia.
He knows the history better than I think anybody that I know of.
All the naysayers said, well, you did that in your league. You won't do it in this league.
But his favorite title is grandfather.
I want my granddaughter, whenever she has children, to come by here and say, you know, your great-grandfather had something to do with this place.
The story of the place and his own are intertwined.
I guess at some point I'll sit back and look back at how my journey with this museum really kind of took place.
In Kansas City, Fernanda Silva, KSHB 41 News.
When the whole world was watching, the 761st Tank Battalion stepped up.
Hadn't told them that we're taking a chance on you guys. The whole country will be looking at you.
Still ahead, the story of the only all-black tank battalion in World War II and the Kansas City man who dedicated his life to service. The first and only woman Army Corps unit of color to deploy overseas during World War II is getting the world's attention after a recent movie came out about their mission. The battalion, nicknamed the 6888, had a critical mission, redistributing and sorting millions of pieces of mail. There aren't many people who know their story, like a group I met with in Leavenworth. A predominantly black women Army Corps battalion nicknamed the 6888 handled a job critical to the World War II effort that many people didn't realize: redistributing mail.
I found an article in February 1945. They made 30,000 address changes a day.
That's retired Navy Commander Carlton Philpott. He's been affiliated with years of research alongside the Richard Allen Cultural Center in Leavenworth.
When they telling the story, well, they just focused on the mail. They had to do all of that and deal with the surrounding areas of the discrimination. They expected them to fail. 6 months. They did it in 3.
It was a 2 to 3 year backlog of mail in the European Theater of Operations. In just 90 days, as he said, historical records document the women handled around 17 million pieces of mail. A monument was dedicated to them in Fort Leavenworth's Buffalo Soldier Military Park, and some of the surviving members got to visit it.
They set the stage for us. They were in the WAC Corps, but they still had to go through Jim Crow and Jane Crow. And here it was, I got commissioned in 1979, still had to go through Jim Crow and Jane Crow.
The Cultural Center also made it so that students in Leavenworth could hear the women's history directly from them during their visit.
Questions that the kids asked, were you afraid to leave home? What kind of food did you have? Did you sleep in a good bed? And to hear the ladies come back and answer, and all these ladies were in their 90s.
80 years after the end of the 6888's mission, researchers here in Leavenworth are still discovering information. Black History Month is a reminder that history is timeless.
We as a people must not only write what will be read, we must write what will be read. And too often what is written about us is written with invisible pens.
Don't depend on the school to tell us our history. We have to tell our kids our history.
Alyssa Jackson, KSHB 41 News. The 761st, known as the Black Panthers, was the only all-black tank battalion in World War II. One of the most decorated members of that brave unit was a man from Kansas City. Kevin Holmes shares his story.
It's heavier than I thought it was.
Yeah.
What is this?
This is a tank shell that came from his tank, and it's
From the 761st?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Heavy is the head who wears the crown. Heavy is the burden carried by the man who fired this tank shell. Heavy is this uniform because of all the medals and accomplishments attached to the man behind it.
On the world stage, he was Pappy Gates, who was a commander in the 761st Tank Brigade.
But to Gary and Anita Montbia,
he was Uncle Charlie. And I still have to chuckle at that.
Uncle Charlie has always had a passion for the military and for service. Here's a picture of him in his ROTC uniform from Lincoln High School. After graduation, he would devote his life to serving our country in segregated units.
We happen to know Uncle Charlie, but there's so many stories of the courage and the valor with which black people fought for this country.
In World War II, when so many American tanks were depleted and the military had nowhere else to turn, they called on the 761st, which included Uncle Charlie, Colonel Charlie Gates, the man behind this uniform.
Patton told them that we're taking a chance on you guys. The whole country will be looking at you. When you talked about his military history, Charles Gates would just light up and just tell you so much about Europe and the Battle of the Bulge and all the stuff they had to go through.
The 761st Tank Brigade, the first and only all-black tank battalion during World War II. Their story has rarely been told, liberating Jewish death camps, helping win the war with a Kansas City native, Colonel Charlie Gates, at the forefront.
He was the most decorated officer in Charlie Company. He loved talking about the 761st Tank Brigade and all the stuff that they went through in Europe and then coming back home and having to fight this war back here. That's where the double victory came from. Victory over there and then fighting for victory over here.
The Battle of the Bulge, the 761st was there. The battle back home for racial equality, the 761st was there. Among his many accolades, Colonel Charlie Gates was the first black in Missouri to receive knighthood in the Order of St. George.
He was a man of achievement, and he didn't wear it on his chest.
No, he didn't wear it on his chest, but Uncle Charlie is a giant. And on this Black History Month, we stand on his shoulders. Kevin Holmes, KSHB 41 News.
The 761st served for 183 consecutive days. Man, that's a long time, and it's longer than any other unit at that time. It wasn't until the late 70s that the unit received the recognition it deserved, when then President Jimmy Carter issued a presidential citation. Colonel Charlie Gates was there. He died in 1997 at the age of 85.
Our family legacy is from slavery to school buses, the scholarships.
The fight for equality never stops, it just evolves. Still ahead, the story of a family who has been paving the way for black students for nearly a century. Less than 100 years ago, schools in Johnson County, Kansas were still segregated, leaving black students with no way to get to school. So one man started his own bus company. Lily O'Shea Becker shares the family history of the McCallops.
Education is a big part of Black History Month, and one Johnson County family has a history of fighting for education for the county's black students.
Education was always important because they knew that that was the way out of poverty, out of slavery, and the passport.
Jessica McCallop McLennan is talking about her family. Their history is on display at the Johnson County Museum. It spans back to fighting for their freedom in the Civil War, and eventually the McCallops settled in the Shawnee area.
They were prominent pillars in the community, providing agriculture and produce to the community.
In 1934, schools were still segregated.
Unfortunately, they could not go to the high school in Johnson County because of the color of their skin.
That's when Jessica's great-grandfather, Robert McCallop Sr., provided help to black students in the county.
He turned his agricultural truck into a makeshift bus to drive students from his very own children from Johnson County to Wyandotte County.
The need was so great, he established a bus company, the McCallop Bus Co., to serve other students.
So they would pass 5 white high schools before they could get to one, which was Sumner High School in Wyandotte County, that would accept them because of the color of their skin.
His fleet grew to 14 buses, and many family members drove. The family bused students for 39 years, but their service didn't stop there.
Our family legacy is from slavery to school buses, the scholarships.
Jessica's nonprofit, Giving Hope and Help, provides scholarships to metro area students. And 2 of the scholarships are in her family's name, continuing their impact on education in the community. Reporting in Johnson County, Lily O'Shea Becker, KSHB 41 News.
First Christian Church in Independence has a long legacy dating all the way back to 1835. And as Claire Bradshaw explains, the church's current reverend is forging his own place in history.
Count it a privilege and an opportunity to share God's word with you again.
That's the voice of Reverend Anthony J. Mondane. Mondane is First Christian Church's first person of color to serve as pastor. He uses his voice to share God's word to guide his congregation to positive change.
I learned that, there's an ugly side to the world, and I'm a part of the change that will make that ugly side change.
Being part of that change doesn't happen just from using his voice at the pulpit.
I'm the first person of color to serve in a lot of spaces, and that's, wow, it just takes a lot for me to understand that and show up in that reality every day.
Mondane is the first person of color to serve on the Independent School Board. He's also the first person of color to be elected to public office in the city.
You don't wake up and say, man, can I check off the first black box? It's like, but God obviously ordained me for such a time as this.
Mondane takes the weight of each position seriously.
It is the people that came before me. It is the people that stand alongside of me, and it is absolutely the people that are coming behind me.
He chairs the city's Juneteenth committee, raising money for a celebration of an important moment in Black history. But he says it's also about giving back to those making change, like the Innovation Center supporting Black entrepreneurs.
This is how we make change. This is how we create those spaces for other people to recognize, hey, my voice matters too, right? And so if I'm the only one, I have failed.
All the while, he hears the voices of God and his grandfather, reminding him of why he is here.
I have to remind myself that I am intentional. I'm on purpose. I'm not an accident. Every day I show up, I'm right on time.
Claire Bradshaw, KSHB 41 News.
My mission is always going to be to protect our stories, to honor them as art, because I think that's what they are.
How a family tragedy helped a woman in Kansas City to create a safe space. That's coming up.
Talking about mental health is often stigmatized and it can be tough. But one group wants the Black community to know therapy can be free and accessible. Megan Abundis listened to those at the KC Black Mental Health Initiative to learn how they're changing the public perspective on therapy.
In Kansas City, a movement is underway to reshape the narrative around mental health in the Black community. Making history now, the KC Black Mental Health Initiative is working to destigmatize therapy and increase the amount of Black therapists.
What we want to do is sustain our communities where we need the most sustaining, which is here.
In 2019, Cecil Watry didn't come into the nonprofit world with big pockets, but did have big aspirations. That in order to destigmatize Black mental health, you have to diversify it.
It is paramount.
Cecil's work is to provide free therapy from this couch with these resources, aiming to change the push-through attitude that often prevents people from getting help.
I really want to be the change that I seek.
Tammy Vang sees the work in action.
I think it's important that we stand up and say, here, I'm a Black therapist, you can be one too.
Raised in Kansas City, Vang said it's a path she had to create.
Growing up, I couldn't tell you one Black psychiatrist. You could do this.
Tammy and Cecil estimate there are now more than 150 Black therapists in KC, and they're trying to spread the word to take advantage.
Therapy is about what do you want to know about yourself. A lot of people think therapy is about fixing things, when in all actuality, it's just about growth. So we want to help our community grow.
Empowering people of all ages to prioritize emotional well-being over simply surviving.
We want to create this new paradigm that mental wellness is key. We want our teenagers in middle school and in high school to not feel like they have to perpetuate violence because they don't know how to manage their emotions.
It is most certainly Black history now.
In Kansas City, I'm Megan Abundis, KSHB 41 News.
While flipping through one of the saddest moments of her life, Corey Smith decided to rewrite her own story and help others to do the same.
Cody was friends with anybody and everybody.
Corey lost her brother in a tragic crash in March of 2019.
Of the two of us, he was the creative.
She keeps his memory alive every time she opens Black and Brown's door.
And the way in which I can offer this as a safe space, I feel like that's what Cody always represented.
She wants to spread the same sense of safety she once found in her brother.
We just need spaces where we don't have to code switch. We don't have to walk in assuming that we are the other. My mission is always going to be to protect our stories, to honor them as art, because I think that's what they are.
Stories written by Black and Brown authors, including local ones.
If we can't amplify the voices that we have around here, we'll never actually be able to push them to the New York Times, right? Like, that's the power of the people.
While working on her shelves, she's also working on herself and finding ways to push her community.
I don't think my job is just getting to the table. My job is always going to be to make sure that we can continuously take up space.
A space she's not afraid to claim or provide.
Everything about Black and Brown is for Black, Brown, and Indigenous people first and foremost. If I make you uncomfortable, then it probably wasn't for you. But are you welcome to be here? Absolutely.
With doors opened, Corey is drafting the next chapter of safe spaces in Kansas City.
Love that Black girl magic. Love mom.
In Kansas City, Fernanda Silva, KSHB 41 News.
That's a 30-minute Black history lesson for you all. You can find all of these stories and more on KSHB.com or the KSHB 41 app. Thank you so much for joining us.